new social media or a bot campaign has started for the Trudeau Liberals, and there's a marked shift in how they're dealing with the pro-Palestinian protests, suddenly calling them out instead of ignoring them, or even promoting them and being okay with them and saying, they've got a point, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very, very interesting. There's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we're starting with the pro-Palestinian protests and all of that kind of stuff. Andy Lee starts us off today, and she says, I'm old enough to remember when saying hold the line was enough to get you accused of orchestrating a violent insurrection and thrown in jail and held without bail. And Jamie is highlighting this Dacey Media report showing a march in Ottawa, right by Parliament, that is pro-Palestinian. Look at all those pro-Palestinian flags. I'll tell you, if this was Canadian flags, there'd be horses ready to trample these people, innocent or not, right? Here we go.
From the river to the when I sing from the I prove that we are almost free. From level 47.
All sorts of amplification. I broke it up just a little bit for just all of the chants and everything. They're very triggering for people, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just moving through it. But the truckers had Canadian flags. The truckers had big booms, train trucks and things like that with full stages, dance parties, DJs, and they weren't saying slogans that were targeting a specific group of people for removal, et cetera, et cetera. And yet the Canadian police here are allowing this protest to continue. Now the parliamentarians have started noticing this and started talking about this. Justin Trudeau puts out a tweet yesterday, and he says, there's a difference between peaceful protest and hateful intimidation. It's unconscionable to glorify the anti-Semitic violence and murder perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th. This rhetoric has no place in Canada. None. I want to reiterate what I feel like about all of this. One, it is exactly the same as the BLM protests and the rail blockades before it, the chop zone when Trump was president in the United States. All of those paid for agitations, this fits that bill. This is a wedge issue. It's being driven by our politicians. A wedge issue splits the population into two camps, pro and against, or whatever, pro-Palestine, pro-Israel, right? Doesn't matter. Wedge, wedge, wedge. Move people apart and have them emotionally invested in the wedge, okay? So you get so emotionally invested that you can't even hear the truth of the matter, being that this is wedge issue being driven by the politicians, because you say, well, this aspect of this thing matters a lot, and we should discuss it, and it matters for us. And then on the other side, you say this issue or this part of this issue matters a lot, and we should discuss it, and so on and so forth. And so you get so entrenched, so emotionally involved in your side that you can't even entertain the idea that you're being manipulated. Okay? That's what this is about. And it was losing steam. And so the politicians who are talking about it now are inflating that bag up again. They want this division. They don't want unity. They don't want people to agree. They want people to disagree as much as possible. So up until now, they being our Canadian government, have been talking about defunding Israel and stopping sending funding to Hamas. And then instead of actually defunding Israel, I think we still send weapons. And instead of actually defunding Hamas, we still send money to Hamas. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of talk and a lack of action. And now this is just to reinflame the argument. Okay. And Justin Trudeau has taken every side on this. It doesn't matter what side it is. He's taken it. He's taken a position in favor of and against that side. Marco Mendicino, also, he's allergic to the truth, but he's saying this. He says, Hamas are terrorists. They murder, rape, and torture. They instigate martyrdom. They brazenly admit that they will keep terrorizing until Israel and the Jewish people are no more. Shouting, long live October 7th is not free speech. It's promoting terrorism, and it must not be tolerated. Well, like him and people he knows are in positions of power to deal with that. I mean, he's not a cabinet minister anymore, right? But I'm sure he could call up a cabinet minister so long as he doesn't make any jokes about using tanks against Canadian people, right? But these people, no jokes about tanks, right? Like, very, very interesting. To me, it seems like they're still trying to inflate the difficulties around this. They're still trying to inflate the divisive wedge. Melissa Lantsman is responding to Justin Trudeau, and she says, finally pressured to say something. This is the division the prime minister has sown. This rhetoric has had a place in every major city on almost every weekend for more than 6 months. Do something. So the Freedom Convoy was weeks old, and they said, well, we've got to shut this down. 6 months later, and Justin Trudeau is just taking another stance on this whole situation. And that's, again, he's not trying to solve problems. He's trying to utilize this controversy to his advantage. And that's a problem, right? It's what politicians do, but it's a problem. Tim is responding to Melissa Lantsman, who's responding to Justin Trudeau, right? Timception here. He says, oh, look at that. After only 6 months of the same hateful protests, the prime minister has managed to find his voice on anti-Semitism. Perhaps he can now use his influence to speak out against universities actively encouraging this hate. All of the universities doing all of the stuff that they're doing. Columbia University right now is having Hamas protests, and they're chasing down Jewish students. And then there's first person stories of, my husband's gone to pick up our kids and they don't feel safe anymore, blah, 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 blah. This is all to continue driving this wedge, all to continue the victimhood. All of it is to continue the conflict. Okay? It's not to fix it, And it's what the prime minister, honestly, the police should be arresting people who break laws for protesting. That simple. And there are people who are breaking laws during protests and not being arrested because they're ideologically aligned with the powers that be. And so the powers that be tell the police not to respond. And so the police are hamstrung in weird ways that the public aren't really aware of. So the public look at this and they compare it to the trucker protest and they say, why is this allowed and the trucker protest isn't? This is obviously breaking laws that the trucker protest didn't. What's going on? And it undermines people's faith in law and order and the security and our police. This country, the infrastructure of the police, right? And that's not good, right? But it leads to benefiting the division that's trying to be sown by our politicians. See how that works? And so the Shadow Davis show says, hilarious how now suddenly every Liberal Party MP on X is condemning these actions, even though they've been going on for months. What's changed? A new strategy? Are they ready to throw them in jail or deport them? Doubtful. Actions speak much louder than words. Right. And so here's young Dundas. So the first videos were all from Daisy Media in Ottawa, and this is from Toronto. It's the same kind of thing. It's the same kind of protest. And again, if these were Canadian flags, you'd have riot police and horses out, right? What's the difference? Well, these protests have been cleared by the politicians for months, right? And so why? Because they benefit the politicians by driving the wedge. That's what's going on with this. Rupa says, she's responding to Arif, our Attorney General and Justice Minister. He says, our institutions should reflect Canada's diversity. The kefkia is an important cultural symbol that should be welcomed in all Canadian institutions. An expression of pride in one's heritage should be celebrated, not stifled. The symbol of the whatever it's called, I'm saying it wrong and I know that, is being used to promote these hateful everything, right? And there's hate on all sorts of sides, so I'm not trying to get behind one or the other. I'm pro-Canada. I'm pro-self-governance. I'm not for wars. I'm not for funding international wars. I'm not for funding Israeli wars, Middle Eastern wars, Palestinian wars, Gaza wars, Ukrainian wars. I'm not for funding any of the wars. I want to focus on Canada and fixing the problems in Canada, not importing the wars of foreign countries, Middle East, or foreign regions, Africa, anywhere to here. That's not what we should be doing at all. This is damaging, okay? And I think that we could shut this down without hate speech laws, without anything more than doing what is written to the letter in our criminal code. No problems whatsoever. No problems at all. And you don't have to be, it doesn't even have to be really controversial. Like, it's just like you're breaking the law, right? And so anyway, this person's talking, Arif is talking about how the keffiyeh is an important cultural symbol. And I'm saying it's actually an important symbol to destroy our culture. And he's trying to say we should celebrate our heritage, even if it's, part of that celebration is this symbol. But Rupa highlights this coming from the same government that has sanitized Christmas, where Christmas lights become winter lights so as not to offend other groups. I'm all for being proud of one's heritage, but to ban Christmas on one hand and say the keffiyeh is part of Canadian heritage on the other is bizarre and hypocritical. This is the kind of pandering and hypocrisy that creates a backlash against people of all cultures. But unfortunately, this is classic divide and rule from the Trudeau and company, pitting one group against another in the service of woke ideology. Okay, so that's what they're doing over and over and over again. Okay, through every conflict, from Black Lives Matter to the First Nation rail blockades to everything that's happened in between, up to and including the Palestinian stuff, Israeli stuff. If you're on one side, you're not on the other. And if you're not with us, you're with them, right? How dare you? So with that in mind, let's talk about housing around the world and what's going on in all sorts of different countries, including Canada. ViceGuard is reporting this. Breaking: hundreds of Afghan migrants are rioting on the streets of Paris. 3 Afghan migrants were found dead a few days ago in what seems to be a murder-suicide case. For some reason, the Afghans are blaming the French police. And so Paris looks like a war zone, as usual these days, which seems weird, don't you think? There's garbage being thrown all over the street. So people seem to be in conflict, right? And it's weird. When I was growing up, Paris was this magical... Home Alone, the movie Home Alone, they're going to Paris for Christmas, right? And it's supposed to be this magical city of lights. Interview with the Vampire, Louis and Lestat live in Paris for a while, and it's supposed to be this magical city of lights. Again, so on and so forth. This underlining of how beautiful and European and how a pinnacle of European culture, right? Totally destroyed, right? Let's throw trash on the street, scream and yell about all of this. Radio Genoa says, asylum seeker with a spray can shouting Allah Akbar has defaced the church of Sinai Medsini in Moranto. I'm getting that terribly wrong. Italy, and numerous houses with Arabic writings. Italian residents are afraid because this man goes around armed and terrorizes elderly and children. We need mass deportation. Yeah, so here's just a quick example of what he's doing. He's going to buildings, drawing on the buildings. This problem would not take much to solve, right? Like I remember the Dukes of Hazzard, and even those incompetent cops would be able to solve this situation. Okay, this is happening in London too. London, UK. Street News says boots on Shingford High Streets this afternoon. So these guys are robbing this pharmacy. Okay, there's that. The person behind the till is calmly just standing there watching these guys rob the place and watching the person film and watching these guys rob the place. Weird. That's weird behavior. You wouldn't normally think that, oh, these guys are robbing the place. I feel like I'm safe to stand here at the till. I'll just wait. Radio Genoa again says Mohammed has 3 wives. What? This is not a joke, by the way. Sometimes it sounds like a joke setup, doesn't it? Like Mohammed has 3 wives, 1 in Morocco, unemployed, 6 children. Britain's social security system, supported by taxpayers' money, pays for everything it needs. The family, Mohammed's family. How many Mohammeds are there in Europe who live off our taxes, right? Pinnacle of European culture. Right.
Every weekend, Mohammed tries to get his children together for a day out. But as Mohammed and his wives are unemployed and dependent on benefits, days like these
Wives?
Are rare.
Chicken, chips, and wedges.
The difficulty of balancing many families on little money is a source of tension, a tension exacerbated by his desire to share the state benefits they receive with his wife and children.
Yes, with his wives and children. Yes, there's a lot of tension because the money's tight. All the taxpayer money doesn't go far enough to feed his multiple wives and multiple children. Now, is there a Tinder for Arabic men who are looking for their second wives? Is there a Tinder for Arabic women who are looking to be second wives? Or do you find somebody who's not like, do the wives have second husbands? I don't think that the wives have second husbands. I don't think the wives are polyamorous in that way. It's not like the wives all have like three husbands too. The husband has three wives and those wives are bound to that one guy, right? That's how that works. I was making a joke about the Tinder thing, but it's really, really interesting how entitled these people feel to the money. Oh, it's tight, having all those wives and those kids' mouths to feed. Muhammad is really struggling. We should really increase those tax dollars that he gets for his family and his wives in Morocco. What? Are you kidding? Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse. Just wait. Right now is the worst story, so we don't have to wait long. Mass migration, communists in the UK, says Nestor. A British woman buys a home in November and then in January receives a letter from the authorities telling her that she has to leave and sell at a loss, basically. Here is a minute 30 of this. I hope the accent isn't too much. Here we go.
So this letter was from the council, and you got this on the 12th of January. You moved in November, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you got this letter, and just spell out what this letter says.
That letter says that because the property is derelict, that they can compulsory purchase it. If there's any repairs to be done in it, they could take it off the price of the property.
Yeah.
And these properties are for migrants. That's what they want these houses for.
Extraordinary, isn't it? And how did you feel when you got a letter? You've moved into your new wonderful home, you settle down, law-abiding citizens, and you get a compulsory purchase order from the council accusing you of occupying a derelict home. How did you feel when you got this?
After paying $200,000 for it, we didn't feel very well.
No. It must have been one hell of a shock, mustn't it?
It was an awful shock. And when I got that, I felt sick. And when we went down to the council the day we got that letter after we read it. And the lady in there, she said, don't worry about it, it's just a standard letter.
We have been so hollowed out as a nation, we've turned our backs entirely on the territorial integrity of this country, to the point where it's become standard to repossess houses.
But why is this always that it's for the immigrant and not the indigenous population?
Well, veterans.
Wow, let's look at history to examine that, eh? Don't want to go there. The letter's here, and you can pause to read it. It's interesting. It says the resettlement team at Northamptonshire Council supports asylum seekers and refugees across 3 different projects: homes for Ukraine, Afghan resettlement, and asylum dispersal. At present, we are seeking a considerable increase in positive immigration decisions being made in favor of asylum seekers, mainly single men. Once they are granted refugee status, they are given only 28 days to leave their home office provided accommodation and to apply for benefits, find work, and source move on accommodation. So, wow, right? We'd really like your house because these migrant men need it quickly. So get out. Also, it's derelict, but we'll give it to these migrant men. Nick Leaf is talking about Canadian asylum seekers, and he says asylum claims by international students have risen 1,500% in the past 5 years. Numbers show the study permit system is being exploited as a way to remain in Canada. The increase is acute at colleges where rates have climbed in excess of 4,000% since 2018. So people come in as temporary students, and then they claim refugee status to stay in Canada indefinitely, and they do. We are on the hook for it. And if you're unfortunate and fall on hard times and have the wrong skin color or aren't from somewhere else, there's no help for you. The help is only for the migrants and the asylum seekers. Here's Jerry, and he says, oddly enough, there are no organizations to help poor white Canadians. Liberals have hijacked provincial social security nets and social safety nets for foreigners for votes. Seamus has this thread. He says, there's staff of, here it is. The Saskatoon Open Door Society is an incredible place. Afghan refugees, Chinese immigrants, Syrian seniors, people from all across the world of all ages, stealing our tax dollars for no good reason at all. When I walked in, these seniors were busy crafting. They find a common language and learning English together. The classes are jammed. They crave the company. They want to learn English to participate in life here. This gift means so much to me. These people probably think he's a complete idiot who doesn't understand what's going on. They want to learn English so they can participate in life here. What do you think that means? That means agency and participating in politics. And that means having a position of power in politics. And that means getting what you want done, changing the country by participation. That's what that means. Seamus O'Regan's an idiot because he doesn't understand that he's facilitating a complete wholesale change of what Canada is. Their staff of over 200 strong from Turkey, Colombia, Syria, Taiwan, even PEI. Yeah, that far-flung island of PEI. They give seniors a sense of belonging, connect newcomers with job opportunities, and help reunite families. Proud to support their work. This is Canada. This is an invasion. Here's Mark, and he says, this is an example of the Liberal Party supporting terrorism. Ottawa steps in to stay deportation of BC climate activist. Feds halt deportation of BC climate activists. Apparently he's been arrested 10 times, and they were going to deport him, and then the federal government stepped in and said, no, don't. Here are two Pakistani guys in southern U.S., and they don't know how they got there to the U.S.-Mexico border. They walked there from Pakistan, they say. Diagolon says, it's a nonstop steady stream of men 18 to 40 entering North America with no memory of how they got here. They walked from Pakistan. They're being instructed to say this by the same people facilitating their arrival with our tax dollars, by the way. We are being intentionally flooded and invaded by third world men for the sole intent purpose of overwhelming our infrastructure and bolstering a ready-made army for the coming strike against the remaining white men, while ours are conscripted to die in a pointless war. Yeah, I think that there's certainly there's certainly concern there that I think is completely legitimate. The Cloward Piven strategy has been talked about many times, and that's what's going on here. That's what's being activated here, overwhelming our infrastructure and just collapsing it by being overwhelmed. Imagine World War Z or Starship Troopers when on K. Right? When the bugs start overwhelming the defense system and they start coming into the compound and they're trying to get not medevaced out, but they're trying to get out before the bugs overwhelm the system. That's what's happening in our countries right now. Right now. Not exactly the fall of Saigon, not quite yet, but it's on the way. This is an invasion, and our leaders are complicit and are holding the doors open. More than that, our leaders are holding the doors open and funding it with our tax dollars through old folks crafting groups, all the way down to full-blown apartments or full-blown hotels to the tune of $100 million all across Niagara, right? That's not accidental. Like, that doesn't happen by, oh my gosh, I can't believe we spent $100 million on that, right? Back to this. As a man that has walked for days myself in all sorts of different environments, I can say with confidence these guys walked a couple of miles from where the bus dropped them off with instructions at best. Their clothes are brand new footwear, sneakers. Sneakers, I guess, aren't going to hold up over the long term. They don't even look dirty or sweaty or at all fatigued despite walking hundreds of kilometers through Mexico with no supplies but a 4-liter jug of water and brand new clothes. Press X to doubt. So I don't know if it's any good. Here's the video.
Where are you from?
India.
India?
Yes.
What, you too?
Yeah.
How long have you been walking? All day?
All day.
Did you fly into Mexico and then walk the rest?
Walk.
But where did you fly into?
What?
Where did you fly into? What city?
No, only walking.
How do you walk from India?
Yes. Yamanama.
Are you from India too?
Pakistan.
Oh, Pakistan. And Pakistan? Pakistan?
Bangladesh.
Bangladesh. Okay. And how did you guys fly into Mexico and then walk in the rest of the way? Walk? How did you get from Pakistan over to here? You're from Pakistan too?
India.
Oh, India?
India, Punjab.
India?
Punjab.
I mean,
okay.
Holy smoke, man. These guys are about to get a curry on, right? Like Jeepers Creepers. You're not going to need too much more. You've got an entire restaurant ready to go, buddy. You're going to make money like nobody's business. Hand over fist. You guys should join together. People love butter chicken. It's like, I'm laughing, but holy smokeronis. If you're at the Southern American border and you're like, hey, where are you from? And they're like, India. And you say, how do you get here? And they say, walked. Yikes, right? Somebody's not telling the truth. Project Tabs says California spent $24 billion on the state's homeless crisis. A recent audit shows no one knows where the money went. On top of that, homelessness increased by 50%. We have to spend $24 billion on homelessness to increase it by 50%. If we don't spend that much, it will increase by 100%. Okay, but we'll have $24 billion though, too. Here's New York. They're getting upset. And here's a guy saying, listen, these migrants didn't vote for you. These people aren't citizens. Why are we giving them all sorts of money? This is crazy town, because it's crazy town, and we're doing it in Canada. Here we go.
We do not want to hear excuses. These asylum seekers, the refugees, and the migrants, they did not vote for you. They did not pay taxes. And yes, majority of them are criminals. And if you're saying that you have to deport them, but also at the same time say, well, this is a sanctuary state, this is a sanctuary city, essentially you're telling us you are useless to us. We have on 130th Street, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., who was an American freedman, who advocated for the American freedmen, and you're telling us you can't do anything for Harlem? What does this say? Harlem homes for Harlem residents. Asylum seekers are not Harlem residents. They are not citizens. In the Constitution solely and is primarily for United States citizens, especially the American freedmen citizens. So, when this man said that we're talking about Harlem, Harlem did not have the asylum-seeking renaissance. It was the Harlem Renaissance that was started with the American freedmen in the city of Harlem. So you must give priority to the American citizens. You must give priority to the American freedmen citizens. And when you stand up here and tell us you can't do anything, guess what? It's election time. It's election.
Empty threat. Don't threaten people with not being reelected. These people run the elections. These people, this guy's not worried that this guy, the mayor of New York, is not worried that this guy's not going to vote for him. And he's not worried that this guy's going to organize millions of people to not vote for him, right? But it's a little bellwether. It's people warning him that we're not going to vote for you if you can't do anything. But guess what? His campaign is fully paid for by the people who paid for him to start this. There isn't a thing. They don't work for us. This guy, right? This guy saying Harlem for Harlem people and Harlem for U.S. citizens. He thinks the politicians still work for him. But he's wrong. He's incorrect. He's misinformed. The politicians work for the big donors who work for George Soros or the real power circles in this world. And the real power circles in this world are hell-bent on an invasion of the West, and they want our money to fund it, and they're taking our money. That $24 billion is going to fly these people, because they're not walking from India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. That $24 billion is going to move these people into a situation where they're in Harlem, and this guy is going to turn a blind eye until there's a full-blown civil war that is sparked by migrants. That's it. That's it. They don't work for us. They don't work for us. I wish it wasn't true. I wish they did work for us. I wish they were just bad at their jobs and stupid and imbecilic and making bad decisions and bad policies. They're doing this because they're dangerous and they're damaging the country on purpose. That's their job. That's what the people who they work for told them to do. Right? Like if you work at Taco Bell and somebody hands you the headset and it says you're on drive-thru and you're doing dishes, buddy, that's what you're doing, right? You're flooding the country with migrants. So people will tell you, man, dishes sucks, right? Dishes are terrible. I love doing the dishes. I love doing the dishes. I thought it was great. But fundamentally, their job is just as cookie cutter as that. You're on lobby. Sorry, man, you're serving all the customers and you're making sure it's clean. That's your job today. That's all. And doesn't matter what they say. Doesn't matter what the constituents say. Doesn't matter what the customers say. You don't work for them. You work for us, right? So Jeepers Creepers. People don't get it. People just don't get it. And wokeness underlines this. In 1993, 60% of Americans in their early 30s, 30 to 34, had at least one child. Now that number is down to 27%. Less than half. That's a big collapse. Why isn't anybody talking about that? This is by far the most catastrophic event in American history, and most people are too distracted to realize it's happening. You can't fight a war. You can't fight a war with a quarter of the population, right? So how long until that 27% is a real big problem for the population of the United States, except that they'll be replaced by migrants coming through the southern border who all vote Democrat because the Democrats are laundering money to pay for their travel. Jagmeet Singh says, Canadians are struggling to afford rent, buy food, and pay the bills. And all of these things are by design to facilitate the coming conflict with the invasion, the people who are invading our country. Anyway, he carries on. In this week's budget, the Liberals failed to address what's driving up these costs. Oh, really? And then he totally makes himself sound stupid. Corporate greed, he says. Corporate greed. It's the carbon tax. It's the invasion that's ongoing, right? You can't build enough houses to offset the 1 million or 1.5 million people coming into Canada every single year. It's not corporate greed, Jagmeet Singh. It is an invasion and conflict. 5th generation warfare. That's the. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful